In this video, I'm going to be building a 10-inch subwoofer. I'm going to go through all the steps. Cutting up the cabinet wood, building it, the design, and then later on the components you need to put in, the speaker and the amp and the low pass filter, all that technical stuff. I'm not an expert in any of that. I've been doing a bit of research on YouTube and I find that there's a lot of information left out or it's way over my head. So this video is about how to do it right from the beginning to the end. Build a 10-inch subwoofer that's going to sound good and look good. And this might be something helpful for guys that may want to do this and think they don't have the space or the professional shop. I don't have any of that, obviously, but I'm going to plow through it and maybe something that you guys be interested in. And yeah, so I'm going to get started on that. And in this first video is basically cutting out all the wood, fitting it so that I'll be able to glue it all together. That's what I do in this first video. And then subsequent videos, we'll talk about the components, where to get them from, with a budget. My budget, incidentally, is going to be somewhere around $200, which is okay, I guess. I could buy one for less than that, but I'm not sure that I want to do that. So let's get started. So I'm going to build a subwoofer, 10-inch subwoofer, so to make a cabinet. So here I am in my crowded garage. I've got this sheet of 3/4 birch cabin plywood, and I have to cut it in half. I don't have a lot of room, don't have a fancy shop, so I'm just going to cut it here where it's lying. So I'll mark my thing. 48 inches. And yeah. I'm making this speaker box on a budget just in my garage, like an average Joe would have. Nothing too fancy, but I'm going to go through this step by step in case anyone's thinking of doing this, and maybe they can learn something. Maybe they can learn how not to do it. We'll see what happens. The reason I'm cutting this piece of plywood in half here is because I don't have a big shop table to lay it out, and my garage is full of stuff. It's full of my toys. Some people call it junk, but so I got to cut it here, and then it's easier to maneuver. So you might find that helpful if you're doing a big project. Just cut the board generally into the size, the general size of stock you're going to need for your project, and then easier to handle. Okay, it's going to get a bit noisy. Yeah, so there you go. So now I'm going to set this up on a little set of benches, and we can mark out the piece we need to cut for this subwoofer. So I've got this sheet of, it's 48 by 48 inch or 4 by 4 foot sheet of plywood sitting on these cheesy sawhorses. So what I'm going to do now is mark it out. So this subwoofer is 24 inches, it's going to be 24 inches high, 14 inches wide, and 15 inches deep. And we'll have a baffle in it and a port. So I'm going to mark it out. So on this sheet of plywood, I can get all but one small piece of plywood out of it for a subwoofer. So out of the one sheet of plywood, I'm planning on getting 2 subwoofer boxes out of it, because I happen to have some leftover pieces in my shop. So other than that, if I didn't have any leftover pieces, I'd have to use a little more than a half a sheet of plywood, which would be kind of annoying. Have a third of a sheet left over for scrap. Don't like that. So right now I'm going to mark this shot out, and then I'm going to cut it with the skill saw, but I'm going to cut it like super accurate, show you how I do that. Not a big secret, but in case you haven't done it before, it might be something you'd be interested in. So I'm going to mark this out now, and we'll do some cuts. Okay, so I've marked out my first pieces. It's going to be the front piece and the back. So it's going to be 14 wide and 24. So obviously it's going to be a fraction less than 24 because I'm cutting 2 pieces out of a 48. So it'll be 24 minus the half the width of the saw blade. So how I'm doing this is I measured over 14 inches, and then I measured 1.5 inches. That's the distance from the outside of this shoe to the saw blade here. I'm going to clamp this 4-foot level down. It's already clamped on the other side. That way I can just run my saw along there and make a perfect cut. Underneath here I have some sacrificial pieces of 2x4 that are holding the whole thing up, so when I cut it, it doesn't go flying off and hit my other junk that I got in the garage here. And I just wanted to mention also, I'm not just building the box here, I'm also doing the electronic stuff. So a little later I'll show you what speaker I'm going to use, where I bought it, the electronics, all that stuff. I don't know much about audio business. I just know I need a subwoofer, and I'll show you how I did it, and let's see how it turns out. I think it's going to turn out okay. So anyway, I'm going to cut these pieces. I'm going to cut a bunch of pieces, but basically I'm going to cut the 2 24-inch high by 14-inch wide pieces off this end. Now incidentally, I'm starting from the factory end. It's nice and beautiful cut here, where at the other side where I cut it over there with that skill saw is not very good, but there's a bit of waste on that end, maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches of waste. So I do my good cuts from the factory end, work my way over, and then I'll have a piece of scrap that I don't care about at the end of the day. So I'll get cutting now and go from there. So I'm going to have to cut this from that end over, because I'm going to be using this end of the shoe against the 4-foot level. So that means I got to crawl around on my mower deck and in between the Jeep and stuff like that. But anyway, that's how it is when you got a crowded garage. So here's the thing, when I cut it, because the saw blade's coming up, it kind of tears here on the veneer. But if I flip it over, because the saw blade is coming from a different direction, it's like a perfect cut right there. It's a nice cut. So this box, this speaker box, I'm not going to just butt things up and glue and nail it together. I'm going to do some rabbet joints on this. I'll be doing that a little later, but yeah. So that's one piece. And I'm going to cut another one right away. So I've marked out my second cut now. So the first one was 14 inches wide because it's the front and back, 24 high by 14 wide. The sides are a little deeper, they're 15 wide, so 15 wide by 24 high. So I've marked it out 15 plus an inch and a half for the width of this shoe on the saw. Now some may wonder, why don't you cut it this way? Wouldn't it be more better, more stable or something? Well, the problem is that this part of the saw gets tangled up in the clamp or something. This way it's nice and there's nothing in the way. That's what I found anyway, experience-wise. So I'll make that cut, and well, I'm getting a lot more room in my garage now. I got rid of that first piece. Now I can walk around this little work table. It's fantastic. Yeah, I think I hit a nail in my scrap piece of wood here. That's not. So now I've cut the two longer pieces, the 14 by 48. Going to cut two pieces out of that to make 14 by 24 on my front and back. And then I cut the 15-inch wide. So I'll have the 15-inch wide by 24 high. That's for my two sides. And now I've got to cut the top and bottom and the baffle. So in this sheet, I have enough lumber to do the baffle, which is going to be like 17 by 14, and then the top and bottom. So these are kind of odd sizes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rough cut a little bit larger than it needs to be, the piece for the baffle. And then I'll do the rest of my cuts over there. Let's see if I can show you what's going on over there. With this thing here, I'm going to go like that. Yeah, so I'm going to see if I can zoom in. I got a pretty decent chop saw there. Let's see if I can get a little bit better look at that. There's a crummy saw, chop saw. There's a miter saw up there, and then there's a small portable table saw, and then there's a shop saw. So I got to dig that all out, and then I can do the nicer cuts on there. So anyway, I'll just cut this, and then we'll get over to doing the more finer cuts and the rabbets. We'll do that after I cut this. Okay, so I got my cabinet saw pulled out from the wall and all the junk taken off of it, my other tools. So what I have is my front and back. It's 14 inches. Yeah, right on 14 inches, and then I'll cut it on the table saw. Now I happen to have a nice table saw that'll go past 24 inches on the fence over here, between the fence and the blade, so that's perfect. So I'm just going to do some cuts right now. I'm going to recut that first one. Turns out it's a little long compared to the others.
you notice the saw is a bit jumpy, that's because it's really cold in the garage here. And the belt on the saw is a bit hard. As I keep using it, it'll smoothen out. Yeah. So now I'm going to work on the rabbets. I got to cut the rabbets for the front piece, front and back, and then the two sides. So now I'm going to cut the rabbets. So on the front and back piece, I have to rabbet out 3/4 of an inch by 3/8 deep. Now here's the thing, with cabinet plywood it says 3/4, but it's not. It's a little less. It's a 32nd of an inch less than 3/4. So you have to keep that in mind. Otherwise, if you do slots and rabbets at 3/4, they'll be sloppy, and that's not good. So best way to do this really is take a piece of your ply on your fence here and then line it up with the saw blade. Now remember to line it up with the outside of the saw blade, not the inside of the saw blade. So I'm going to do that. See how that works out. That looks pretty good there. And then when you cinch it, sometimes it moves, so back a little bit, like that. Block up my fence. So that's probably a little, it's got to be perfect, okay, so you got to play with it, and once you think you got it set up, then the thing you do is you take a piece of scrap and cut it out, make sure that it's correct. So now my height here has got to be 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so bring that down to 3/8. Okay, 3/8 is right about there. Okay, so that's that. So I get a piece of scrap and from somewhere make a cut. So I've cut all these initial cuts here. So now what I'm going to do is cut this out so that I can form the rabbet. So what I've done is I just set the blade up to the height of the thickness of the piece of plywood, and then I've got 3/8 from the outside of the blade to the fence. And so I'll pass the wood along like that to cut it. Now some might say, why wouldn't you do it like this way? Well, the problem with that is if the board flops around, which it's going to do, then it'll damage the part that I want to keep. So if I do it this way, the board's going to flop around a bit, but it's going to damage the offcut, not so much the stock that I want to keep. So let's cut that, show you how that happens. That's a little corner, so you always get caught there. fold in here. So I've got my the rabbets cut out. So another way you could do this is with a router, set up on the router table. You make a nicer job, there's no question about it. But it's just really creates so much dust, and yeah, I could hook my vacuum up, but it takes longer. You're turning all this wood into dust instead of just slats of wood, which I'm going to use for kindling. So yeah, I'm going to show you how it's going to fit now. So let's say this is the front. Okay, that's the front. Here's the back piece. And then we got the side pieces. I didn't rabbet out excuse me, the sides of them because excuse me, fit like that. Like that. Boom. So let me try and give you an idea what's going on. I got just the front of the box here, sides. You can see how excuse me, how they fit in real nice with the rabbits. See, that's just, whoa, I don't think you can see that. Well, anyway, and this is rabbited out top and bottom here for the lid, okay, for the top of the box and then the bottom. So now what I'm going to do is mark out where the baffle's got to go. It's got to go in the sides here. Now mark that out, and then we'll have to cut that out with a router. So let's start thinking about that. Okay, so I got all the pieces cut, the rabbets, and then I rabbited edges and stuff, and I just sticking it together here, a dry fit. This will be the front here, and then the sides, top, and then the bottom down here. Boom, underneath. So it fits pretty good. So now I'm going to take it apart, and I've got to mark out and router out the slots for the baffle, for the port. So what I'm going to be doing is in the front here I'll be cutting a round hole for the speaker, and then at the bottom a square hole for the port. And so we'll see how we do that. So I'm going to take this thing apart now. And I just put a utility knife in here, pull the lid off the top, set it up over here. See how this fits in pretty nice here. Carefully take these clamps off. And I just have to watch that the whole thing doesn't collapse on me. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, awkward, but the front and back, I'll take them off. That down here, that down here, and these here. So I've marked these out where the so this will be the front of the speaker, and so the sound waves, apparently they'll go, I can hold this up like this, the sound waves from the speaker can go through this channel and out the bottom. That's the idea. So this will be a baffle or a port, so the sound can go like that. So in front here I'll have the speaker, This will be cut out in the front for the port, and then in the back I have to mount the plate amplifier with all the hookups and so on. So let me use the router. I'm going to get the router set up and then we'll go from there. Okay, I'm getting ready to router out the slots on the two on the side panels. So I got a plunge router, 1/2 inch collet, and I got my bit in here. It's a 3/4 now. I mentioned before that the plywood is cabinet plywood is many times it's called 3/4 under. It's like 1/32 of an inch under. So when you buy, if you're buying a bit for doing slots or whatever in this cabinet wood, make sure you buy what they call a 3/4 under, or I think it's 19 millimeter, something like that. If you use a regular 3/4, your slot will be too big, and then your joint will be sloppy. So yeah, it's a 3/4 under router bit. I buy these online. They're pretty good. So I've got my plunge router set so that, I'll show you, lock that here, and I use this caliper, and well, it's not set correctly right now. So I set that at the thing that it needs to be for 3/4. Then I just hold it here and eye it up along the bottom of the plate, so I got it right on. So that's good. Cheap caliper comes in handy. And I've got a little guide here, so now what I can do is make some dust, make some noise. And what I'm going to do is, because I got this fence set up for this bottom slot, I'm going to do the bottom slot on all 4 sides so that I don't have to keep setting my router up over and over again. Like I'm not going to slot this one and then do that one right away, because I'd have to readjust this guide here, and I don't want to do that. Now I could set this up on a router table. I got one over there, but it's only 4 pieces. By the time I set all that up, it just takes too long. Don't need to anyways. This isn't going to be seen. It's not like I'm doing fine furniture or kitchen cabinets or something. This won't be seen. It just has to be structural, and that's why I'm doing it this way. So let's do this. Well, one thing I forgot to mention is I need to clamp this down. Otherwise it's going to be sliding around. I don't want it to slide around. I want it to stay there. So I'm going to have to move this around a little bit, reorganize things. Okay, I've got this clamped down. I always put a piece of stock underneath the table saw for the clamp, because underneath the table saw there's really no flat area for your clamp to rest on. So yeah, so here we go. Let's see what happens. Now, I'm going to router it along, and I'm going to go slightly past this point here of where the vertical comes down, because it doesn't matter if no one's going to see it, right? So rather than just stop here and then have to deal with these rounded corners, I'm going to just go past it a little bit. So let's see what happens. Okay, so that was pretty easy. Just use this here little guide to measure it a bit here and there, and that turned out real nice. So that's the slot for the bottom piece, and now I'll slot the rest. There's no point in me filming all this, but yeah, maybe I'll just show you how I set up this guide here. Just undo these have a little screws and just slide the router base till it lines up pretty good. Oh, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to do all these bottom ones first. See, I made a mistake because I was trying to show you something. Well, I'll do this now. Now that I got it. Okay. Okay. That looks okay. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to do all the other longer slots because I have it set up like that, and we'll go from there. So yeah, I'll do that, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so I got all of my side pieces routed out for the inside baffle. As I mentioned before, this is the front of the speaker box, and then this will be a port, so the sound waves can go like that, back and forth. It's just the way it's designed, these things. So now what I have to do is cut those baffles to the correct size. So I got the, obviously I can do the length, but how do I do the width? So I'll show you how I do that. So this is a way that I accurately measure how wide these baffle pieces should be. Like I mentioned, they have to be pretty accurate. So anyway, so I know that my speaker, the front of the speaker is, of the speaker box is 13 7/8. And incidentally, it was supposed to be 14, but somehow it's 13 7/8. And I discovered that the hook part of my tape was bent in a bit, and it was messing up my measurements. So I must have dropped it or something on the floor. So I straightened that out. Anyway, there's something to watch. So what I do is, hope you can see it here. So I extend my tape to 13 7/8, and I put that right on this outside part of the slot, 13 7/8, and then I measure to take a look at what it shows on the inside, and it's 13 and 1/8, maybe slightly more than that, almost 13 5/16. So that's how big this interior panel has to be for width, 13 and 3/16, 13 3/16. So you can use this method anytime you want to measure the middle part between two sides. Slap your two sides together, put your tape on the actual outside measurement. If I didn't have a slot, then my measurement would be 12.5 inches. I don't know if you can see that there, it'd be 12.5. A little more, but anyway. So that's how I measure that. So I've gone and cut them already, and I've got one here. So I've got this here rabbit, which is going to go in here, and the vertical piece will nest in here. Then I cut the rabbit on the other end of it here. So this is going to fit into a slot that I'm going to have to cut into the front part of the speaker box. So I have to cut that slot, and then everything fits together nice and tight. So I'm going to use the router for that. I have to change the collet to the 1/4 inch collet and put a 3/8 straight bit router bit and go from there. So now just show you how I get the measurement for cutting the slot. Now this is the front of the speaker box. It's laying face down. I have it butted up against the side piece. It's exactly lined up here, and so I just extended a line. You can see this line here, so I just put something straight, drew my pencil mark there. So that's the top of the slot. So I have to put a 3/8 slot that's 3/8 of an inch deep into the front of this speaker board. So I'll get ready to do that right now. If you're unfamiliar with routers and how they work, I mentioned I have to change the collet. So this is a collet. It screws into the shaft, and there's different sizes. You can see this is a 1/4. What I have in here is a 1/2, so I've got to get that out of there. All you do is loosen off the tightening nut. Let's see here. There's a little button you push to lock the shaft. Obviously I'm not in the right spot yet. There we go. And just undo that. Loosen off the collet. Not loose yet. This is just some info in case you're not familiar with routers and you think you're going to go and get one. And if you're going to get one, get a 1/2 inch plunge router. Spend a few bucks. You can get a cheaper one with 1/4 inch collet, which is fine, but it really limits the type of bits you can put in there. So I'm going to pull this 3/4 under bit out of there, and then just keep taking this off. Unscrew it. I'm unscrewing it here. There we go. So that's the 1/2 inch. You can see it's quite a bit larger than the other, which I just dropped. Hopefully it's fine. It seems to have survived, so yeah, just screw this in its place. That looks a bit corroded there, not corroded, but well, a bit corroded. Okay, I'm screwing it in. So now what I'm going to do is I got this little kit of this 1/2 inch, 3/8 and 1/4 inch straight bits. And I'm going to take the 3/8 one out. And it's been used a bit, but it still works. Shove that in. I like to shove it in as far as I can. I noticed with I have another router, it's an older Craftsman, and the bit has a tendency to migrate out of the collet, so you get a reef down on that thing like crazy. This one's a lot better. This is from Canadian Tire, this one. It's called a Mastercraft Maximum. It's sort of better quality set of tools. They're not bad. I bought it on sale. I like to buy everything on sale because I'm cheap. So I'm getting my left hand. I'm underneath. I'm holding this a little button here that blocks the shaft from spinning. So it's tight now. So that's that little button I was telling you about right there. Push that in just to lock it. So now the thing's in. So what I'm going to try and show you is how I line that up. I'm going to start wearing my gloves. It's like, I think it's minus 15 Celsius outside, and I could heat my garage. I have a heater, but I'm too cheap. Rather suffer. So anyway, I push this down. I don't know if you can see that. And I just want to line that cutter head up to that line there. So yeah, I'll just push this out a bit. Push it out a little bit more. That looks pretty good. And I don't know what to say, because once I cut it, it's done, right? Yeah. Alright, I'm gonna have to go with that. That looks pretty good. So I'm gonna cut that now. There's no So that did not work out as nice as I hoped, but it's done. So then this will go like this. So I think that's pretty good though, actually. That fits pretty nice and snug. Actually, it fits nice and snug. I had to fight that a bit. I could see like doing this on a table, a router table, you get a lot better control because the fence is longer. This here, if the fence was longer, then, because once I get past the edges here, I've lost part of the guide off the bottom of the router. And yeah, I got to really keep a close eye on it. But like I said, none of this is actually going to be seen. I'm just doing this basically more for structure than anything else. So now I'll cut the other one out. So now I'm going to dry fit. I got all the components for this speaker box. All the components, not components, a piece of wood. Anyway, I'm going to see how this fits together now. So there's a bottom baffle. And there's the vertical upright baffle, fits in here. That. It goes like that. Okay, and then what should I do next? Here's a front. Let me see how this front fits here. It's not doing what I want, and I think I see I made a mistake. Can you believe it? I made a mistake? Yeah. So I have to rethink this. If you could see how tight, I'll show you what my mistake is. Pretty obvious now that I think of it. Is that, let's see if you can even see this. I'll zoom it in a bit. And then I'll go like this. And then let's get some focus going here. This automatic focus doesn't want to automatically focus. So this here, here's a mistake I made. This tongue sticking out should actually be flush with this, and then this here shoulder of the rabbit should be back 3/8 of an inch. So what I have to do is cut this off. That's nice and flush. I have to cut this off and then recut the rabbit 3/8 by 3/8 back in here. Hey, I made a mistake. At least I cut it too long and not too short. Because if you cut it too short, then yeah, that's a problem. So let me do that, and then we'll try this dry fit thing again in a few minutes. So I've got the box dry fitted together. So you can see this is from the bottom, and yeah, the joints all look pretty nice. It fits real nice and tight. The These corners are nice. I didn't put the bottom pieces on, but these line up real nice. So yeah, that worked out. Let's take a look at it from the other side. So this is the look at, we're looking at from the top. So that's that, this is the front, so the speaker's going to go in that hole, and the amp and electronics will go in the back here. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased. I'm pretty pleased with the way it worked out. So the next thing I want to do is, yeah, what do I want to do next? I think I like to, I'm kind of loath to cut the holes for the speaker and the plate amp. I have the measurements for them, but I like to see them first, but it's much easier to cut them out now. But I think I'll do that on the next video.